This is part 2 of a 2-part session. So if you're just coming in, just pick up with us and it'll be cool. But you are getting the second part. Sorry that the schedule didn't represent that. Also, many of you have been asking about materials, follow-up things, which is a great question because what we hope some of you are going to do back in your prayer rooms and churches is that you're going to start gathering. Some of you are going to say, you know what, why don't 2 and 3 of us come together and start sharing stuff and praying for each other and keeping confidence and going deeper in some of these areas. And if you want to do that, the ministry I direct, I'm on staff at IHOP, but I direct a ministry called Desert Stream, which is connected to IHOP, but it's separate. There's a website on the back of your outline, and if you don't have an outline, it's www.desertstream.org. You can get all kinds of materials from us, or you can get them in the bookstore. There's a section in the bookstore which is for the staff. My name is Andy Comiskey. There's all kinds of like little guides that you could go through in 2s and 3s. So some of you need to follow up on this. And the answer is not going to be through the big, PhD in the big city. It's going to be as you start gathering together and working it out where you live. These are issues that we face where we live. We can't afford to be commuters with the issues in our life. We have to learn how to form meaningful relationships with trusted people who can keep secrets and who can pray with us and cover us where we actually really need it. Now, one of the areas that is important for us to take seriously is that many of us have some serious things in our life, some serious woundings and some serious distortions in our heart. And one of the things that we might be tempted to do is just to say, well, it's all sin and it doesn't really matter and, my sin, your sin, whatever, it's all sin. Well, that could be true. But what I want us to take very seriously is that many who are among us are seriously wounded. There really are some deep core issues, like issues of sexual abuse, like issues tied into homosexuality, where there really is a profound distortion in how we experience ourselves and how we experience other people. There's no shame upon that. Some of you have really serious sin problems in the sense that you are really bound to habitual patterns of sin. And the way that you cope with that is by minimizing it. You say, oh, it's really not that bad. We're all sinners. Or you say, well, God forgave me for that because I confessed it. But if you really step back and are honest, you have to admit, I do this on a regular basis and it's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. I'm doing it with a higher degree of frequency. And that's shameful. And it's painful for us to look at, but you don't get healing because you're uncomfortable and you don't want to deal. And then some of you want to shake your fist at God and say, well, I prayed and you didn't take it away. And I think what God honestly would say to you is the same thing He said to me when I was trying to overcome a pornography addiction. Andy, if you're not willing to tell the truth, the absolute truth, to a core group of people, then don't tell me you want to be free. And you might say, well, I don't have those people. Well, then get them. Get them. You might say, well, my church would never let me. Then go to another church. We're not under Roman rule, people. If we are seriously wanting to be a pure bride, that may begin with our intercession, but it shuts down real quick when we are not telling the truth about the impurities within our own temple. We can pray all the livelong day and yet not let our fellow intercessors know what is eating us alive from the inside. Tell the truth. Please don't blame God. Because in your isolation you cried out. The answer comes through the body of Christ. It comes through Christ incarnated in trusted brothers and sisters. And we are not where we were 30 years ago. In every community, there are Christian therapists. There are people that are gathering on the basis of their brokenness, and they are saying, there is a place for you here. Don't you dare blame God because you don't want to shame yourself by showing up in one such group. Admit the problem where it's a problem. It's called pride. It's called you're not wanting to be known as a sinner. Yeah, you're free to pray that God would bring in all the sinners into your community, but you don't dare want to be known as one. That is a problem. That is a problem. Let's start forming these groups where we live. You can do it. You can become known. There are trustworthy people. Don't let the few that misused your confession stop you from getting the help you need. I want to introduce a very good friend of mine. You saw her beautiful face if you came to the first session. Her name is Rachel Scoggin. She is a good friend of Desert Stream, a good friend of IHOP, and a good friend of the body of Christ. Rachel Scoggin, get up here.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just share a little bit of my testimony for a few minutes. And really, I'm going to talk about how I became willing to face and get free in the face of same-sex attraction. I grew up in Northern California, and that really is an area that, in a very bad way, is known for trailblazing in the area of sexual sin. And as I grew up in that community and in the San Francisco Bay Area and worked in San Francisco, worked in Berkeley, all around me throughout my life, I had sort of these people who were really like false shepherds guiding me in a way. I was raised in church. My parents raised me in church. But for me, when I would go to church, I would really feel like women weren't represented correctly, just all the different things that we face. And, of course, when you're in Northern California, then they're really hammering that down to you. But one of the things that really I remember growing up was that I was probably like 4 or 5, and I was hearing this hymn, and the hymn was called Use Me, Lord. And in my mind, when I heard this hymn, what I thought was, I don't want to be used by the Lord. Because to me, it sounded kind of like a doormat. It didn't really sound like a tool in the Lord's hands. It sounded like, this doesn't really sound so good. And so that really began as a young age, me kind of looking outside the doors of the church to look at other places to find shepherds that could help me. And so as I got older, I never considered myself gay growing up. I had a cousin who identified herself as that. I had an aunt who did. They definitely had an effect on me, but I didn't identify myself as that. And as I got older, about 19, 20, I started to feel like, I think I'm feeling like I could go this direction. And as I started to feel that, I also felt this feeling of, I can't tell anybody. Nobody can know about what's happening here. And so what I chose to do is really start talking to the people who were completely in the lifestyle. Wrong choice, but I went ahead and did that anyway. And so I was in college and I was doing this, and it really felt like, maybe this is another way to go. I didn't necessarily think that the Lord could go with me in that place, but I was willing to leave him behind and go ahead and do that. And so as I dealt with all of this, I dealt with my family. My dad left when I was 4 years old, and so that caused a little rift. My mom ended up remarrying when I was 9 and had lots of kids, and my stepdad was the up-and-coming guy of the church. But for me, what was really hard was in front of the church, he was somebody, but behind closed doors, as he was with me, he was over-disciplining me. And that really sent a message to me that really men weren't too trustworthy. My relationship with my mom was really one of more friend and mother, and I didn't really know when she was going to put the correct hat on. And I remember one time even having an argument with her around 14, 15, like, could you just tell me which hat you're wearing today?